Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. Some words people have used to describe me range from speaker, trainer, coach, healer, writer, spiritual advisor, teacher, podcaster, and someone even called me their soul Sherpa once. I'm less concerned with titles or labels and more interested in results, change, and creating a world we want to, can, and are proud to live in. A kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's backgrounds, experiences, and truths. They trust in themselves, in life, and recognize that we need each other. And they know how to cultivate healthy relationships to true power, not the very unhealthy kind of power our current culture is predicated upon. Speaking of our culture, there's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. You can expect a wide range of topics when you tune into this show. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, sex, love, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, activism, advocacy, and much more. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating and review wherever you listen in from. Thank you so much for being here with me. Here we go. Hello, everybody. This is episode number 263 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, and I am, per usual, really pumped for today's guest. Something I've been noticing on the podcast lately is I'm talking less with guests about what they do and more about how they're doing and what they're up to in life overall. And today's conversation really felt like one of those. My guest, Kathryn Budig, is an internationally celebrated yoga teacher and author known for her accessibility, humor, and ability to empower her students through her message, Aim True. Her big truth was about finding happiness within the pursuit of success. From there, we discussed a variety of ways the pursuit of success makes us unhappy, from pursuing things because we think we should, to the ways we use social media, seek validation, and other forms of self-compromise. We talked about sustaining ourselves versus pushing or hustling, and we also explored feeling comfortable in our skin as our bodies change and we go through different phases. We talked about her experience of coming out in a relationship with a woman after her divorce from her husband. So to say this one is packed and juicy is an understatement. Enjoy, share, and if you want to check out any of the resources that we mentioned in the episode, head on over to the show notes page at untameyourself.com/TT-263. That's untameyourself.com/T as in truth, T as in telling -263. Kathryn, how are you?
Hey, Elizabeth.
I'm really excited for this. So for those of you listening, I had been following Kathryn online probably for a couple years, and more so in the last 2 years. You know, when you follow people and you start to notice someone's really, seems like, even though I don't know you, like you were coming into more of yourself.
Sure.
I'm like, I don't know this person, but I feel like I actually am getting to know her more now. So that was really cool. And I went on this yoga retreat with Kathryn and her partner, Kate, back in January. It was writing and yoga. So it was super fun to spend some time with them. And because we were writing and we were unpacking all these interesting things, I got to see also just deeper into Kathryn's personality and what she's passionate about and what's going on in her world. So I'm very excited to have the conversation.
And I'm excited to be talking with you. You're a very good conversationalist.
Thanks. So, okay, first question I ask everyone is, what's a truth that's having a big impact on your life right now?
Well, currently it's the concept of finding happiness and how that associates with the pursuit of success.
Ooh.
So, yeah. And I've been really rocked by the death of Anthony Bourdain because he was someone who I never had the privilege to meet, but I had big plans to become his friend and have him mentor me. And I really looked up to him as a human and also as someone that I wanted to emulate in many ways. And he said something along the lines of find the things that make you happy and do more of that. And I think it really rocked me just to find when I found out he took his life, because to me, he just was emblematic of this man living his life to the fullest. I mean, you cannot say that he lived small at all. And he was uniting people and swiping away this concept of differences and fear. And it was just really alarming to know. I mean, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know what kind of mental health issues are going on there, obviously. But just from a really simplistic standpoint, it just seemed like, wow, that's the life to live. So it's made me readdress how I live my life and what I'm pursuing because I think I should, because I think it will bring me happiness, because I will view myself as successful. Others will see me that way, versus what are the things that actually make me happy and why am I not doing more of that?
Yeah. So what are some of the, I want to know in both columns right now, what are some of the things that maybe you're doing or even recently like doing because you felt like you should versus the things that now that you're in this inquiry, you're like, oh, I need to do more of those?
Sure. Well, I used to write for a bunch of magazines and online publications. It's something that I've stepped away from in the past couple of years, but I've been kind of pushing myself lately of, wow, I'm kind of out of the loop. Maybe I should try to get back on a masthead. Maybe I should be, circulating. I used to have a blog up at least once a week, maybe multiple times on different platforms. And I was formulating a story for a publication, and it was something that honestly, it's fluffy. It was kind of a fluffy concept that would have been a funny article, but fluff. And it was also a way to get back in the good graces with this publication. And I just caught myself like, why the F am I doing this?
Yeah.
This is totally feeding my ego. This is not making me a better person. This is making me look shiny and it's fueling my resume. And I don't want to waste time writing an article that I don't even really give. Oh, can I curse on this?
Yeah, no F-bombs is my preference, but anything else goes.
That I don't give a shit about, you know? Yeah. And so I'm really just trying to, if I'm going to create content, I want it to be something that I am burning up on the inside and I have to get it out of me.
Yeah.
And not because I'm just checking the marks of like, this is what successful people do. And this is how people will think that I'm still relevant, because I had this big fear of not being relevant.
Yeah.
And I'm working on that on a daily basis.
Which it's such an interesting thing because in this social media climate we live in, there's this concept of, for those of you listening, not watching, air quotes, public figure, right? Mm-hmm. Where the way people relate to celebrity is so different. Like when we were growing up, it was movie stars and athletes.
Yes.
TV stars, movie stars, athletes, entertainers. Big time celebrities. But like anyone with a friggin' Instagram can technically be famous these days. And it is that to stay relevant. In the last few years, I've taken a couple of like long social media breaks of like 2 weeks to a month. I consider that long. And then to come back, it feels like you're like walking into the woods and you're like, do I know my way around here? Is anyone even listening? Like, what's going to happen when I come back?
Yeah, I mean, it goes, I remember I used to post 3 times a day on social media, thinking that was, the level that you had to put out to keep people interested. Actually, I've got to pull this up. There was a post that I have to read to everybody that really just hit me hard in a good way. It's a friend of mine. She's a yoga teacher. Her name is Tara Stiles.
Oh, yeah, and I know who that is.
She posted this at the end of one of her posts, and she said, I know it's probably a weird thing to post on Instagram. You don't need to know what she posted. That's not important right here. But maybe it's something that we need to focus on instead of using social media as a way to get ahead of everyone in some way while trying to disguise it with pleasing pictures and platitudes. And I was like, damn, it's really become this fascinating cutthroat everyone can compare themselves to everyone. There's no peace. There's nowhere to hide. It's not, and it comes back to where are we getting validation from? We're now desperate for the validation of others through the format of figures and numbers. And if we are not reaching a certain amount of likes or shares or comments, I mean, even having a podcast, I have a podcast too. Like I can go check to see where we're ranked whenever I want to. And it's horrible. It's poisonous. I have a book. I can go see what my book is ranked on Amazon whenever I want to. So it's no longer just you created something amazing and you put it out into the world. You instantaneously know exactly how it's rated compared to everyone else who's doing what you're putting into the world. And then it just dampens the content. And I want to get back to a place where I'm proud of the content that I'm putting out. Yeah. And I do not care where it's being ranked or how it's being received.
And what's interesting to me too is so many of these rankings, it's not like a pure ranking based on merit. They're based on algorithms.
Oh, it's so complicated.
Like even in iTunes, like no one knows how. I mean, there's some really obvious ones, like probably like the top 5-10% of podcasts in iTunes. Okay, it makes sense. But, I have so many friends with podcasts, and there were so many times where we're like talking about stats and numbers and things, and like they might be ranked or I might be ranked, and we know damn well we have different numbers than each other, but somehow the order doesn't reflect the actual numbers. And so it's just so fascinating. And what I find too, being like on the content creator side of the thing, is that the people who consume the content, they don't know any of this.
No, and they don't care.
They don't know and they don't care.
Content.
But they're judging based on it though. Yeah.
I know. But then it makes me wonder how many people, I don't listen to podcasts because they're high ranked.
Me neither.
I listen to podcasts because they're interesting to me. That being said, sometimes I will find a book or a podcast because it's featured.
Yeah.
And it's something that I may not have seen because it wasn't featured on a main page or higher on a list. But if you're putting out content that I find interesting, I'm going to listen to it.
Yeah.
And I just need to remind myself of that as a content creator, that's what matters.
And what I find even more interesting, because again, as you do as well, and this is cool because you specifically have the lens into the yoga world. I have so many friends who are like coaches or online thought leaders and people like that, who I know behind the scenes also how well or not well they do financially. And that's always really interesting to me, how to see what these vanity metrics, like the social media stuff, projects out into the world and the assumptions that people make about how much money someone must be making. A friend brought to my attention recently some leaders that he knows actually, like their money, how they live their life and their lifestyle that they post about on social all the time, their money isn't coming from their business. But they're not like, they're just letting people believe that it does, and like not being like, by the way, I have a trust fund, or I have a sponsor, or like, I do this side thing, or like whatever it is. And again, there's people out there looking, thinking a thing is a certain way and comparing themselves. It's really, really intricate and fascinating.
Of course, it absolutely is. I've had people. I remember one comment that stuck out to me. I don't even remember the context of what it was, but someone made a comment along the lines of, you've already written a book. Why do you need to make more money?
I love when people think writing books makes money.
I wish my books, I could float on that. I mean, that is passion projects. That is serious passion projects.
Yeah, it's like, unless you're like Brené Brown or Tim Ferriss, you're probably not making money on your books.
No, I was going to say more like if you're at a Harry Potter level.
You're like, I don't even know if Brené Brown makes money on her books. That's funny. So I'm with you. I did this on Instagram, this 30-day writing devotional thing. I had started it in May. And the reason I did that was to get back to just pure content that was coming from my heart and not be worried about the numbers. And it was good because I got to really see how true that was for me on a day when like, the previous day, there was like 364 likes. The next day, it's like 76. And you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
But like, if the point is to not care, I have to just really be cool with it. And so that was like a nice little reset for me. That helped.
I also I think it's worth pointing out that, and this will probably always be this way, that the things that are going to get the most attention and the most likes and the highest ratings are very vanilla for the most part. They're safe. They fit in within a box. They're easy to describe. And that's what most people are going to be attracted to.
Yeah.
That being said, I think so many of us are so hungry for something unique and raw and honest and real, but it's never going to reach that mainstream level, which unfortunately dissuades people from trying to be honest and real and different and listen to what they want to say. So the people who are really sticking to their guns and doing what they want to, regardless of how it's accepted. I mean, so many of us, if you want to, you could just play the freaking game and rocket your numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a formula for that.
Yeah.
But is that what you want to do with your life? Is that what's going to make you happy and you're going to do on a regular basis? So just for anyone struggling out there who doesn't feel like, why don't people like me more? I mean, what you're doing is so special, and you just cannot associate that with a number. Yeah. But you do have to associate it with, this is what is lacking out there, and this is what I need to put out into the ether.
I'm really glad you said that, and it's a really amazing point. I was working with a business coach a couple years ago, and I was drawing a comparison, and I was in this place of being like, I know this person is a shitty person, like, how do they have something? And they're like, because it's manufactured. The answer is like, it's manufactured. She's like, you're not manufactured. You're just like real. You're just yourself. And I'm like, and I can't not be. I can't. Every time I've ever tried to like even like go like work the system a little bit, it's like I get a cosmic 2x4 from life, and I'm like, okay, I'll stop doing that. I get it. I'm not built that way. Not my style. So, okay, that's like the thing that, you've been doing because you think you should. So what's some of the things that you've been doing instead that actually do bring you the joy, bring you the happiness, and are real?
Right. I've cut way back on travel because I've been traveling for a living for the past 10-ish years, and it brought me so much joy for a really long time. And I will forever be grateful for the places that I've seen, the people I've met. It is really special. But I'm 36. I want to start a family soon. My parents are older. We live in the same city. I'd like to be close to them. I'm getting this very this pull to be grounded and to be home and to create habits and rituals.
Yes.
And so which is not sexy, right? What's sexy? Like traveling the world, being in front of people, moving, shaking. And I'm like, I want roots, I want to wake up and feed my dogs and go take a class and then write or create and then do it again the next day. And those are the things that are really fascinating for me right now. And I've been moving more and more to the food world because that's just such a happy place for me. So we're actually in the middle of figuring out opening up a restaurant in Charleston, South Carolina, where we live, which is not going to be a moneymaker. I can almost guarantee it. I'm just hoping it's not going to knock us out.
Yeah.
But, it's just something that I've always dreamed about. And there's a void in Charleston that I would like to fill with the kind of food that I want to bring. And so things like that, where it's not big, it's not flashy, but it's something that excites me. And I'll continue to work in yoga. I mean, I'm regularly writing content for Yoga Glow programs, courses, classes.
I love your Yoga Glow. If anyone listening looks for like online yoga they could do, I love the Yoga Glow app, and I love Kathryn's classes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's not going away. It's not like I'm moving completely away from yoga. I'm just readjusting how I do it. I'm not a young 20-something-year-old who's single who wants to rock it all over the place. Like I'm settling into the next phase of my life, and I want family. I want that shock to my system of what really matters and readjusting the way that I see things.
Yeah, I love this. And I'm feeling, maybe it's this like mid-30 thing, because I'm coming up on my 35th birthday in a couple months, and I'm with you. I have very little desire to travel anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, I want the roots. I want the consistency. I want the habits. I want to like go to this class the same time every week. I want to, have a neighborhood thing. I want to walk into the coffee shop and they know me. Like, I crave that. I've moved around so much the last few years and traveled so much. I feel like I want roots. And to me, it is sexy. Stability, reliability. I'm like, that is hot to me. Like, it's so funny. I was literally, this is how I am, and it's my show, so I can say it. I'm like, I was literally just going to be like, that makes my nipples hard.
Yes.
It
Girl,
does.
over here. They're swinging.
They're swinging. So, yeah, I'm with you. And, it's interesting because I started dating a couple months ago after a long break, and I decided to try out some apps, which I had never done before. And I can't believe how many people their profile is all about like traveling to exotic places and pictures of them with like koalas and tigers and these animals that are probably sedated. And I keep wanting to be like, I give less of a shit about where you've been. I want to know how you treated the people when you got there, and and what you did there. You know what I mean? Like, I was so like, it's like, does every dude in LA just like travel half the time? Or is this just like how they think they're going to like reel in women? I don't know.
I don't know. I also feel like you and I are really blessed that we have traveled a lot.
Yep.
So we've been able to get that out of our system. I mean, one of my best friends, she has a 2.5-year-old. And just even the mention of going to New York, she's like, when, how? Yes, let's go now.
Yeah.
So I think it just also depends on what your background is. And I'm just totally traveled out, and it was amazing. But, it's kind of that concept of the grass is always greener.
100%.
Or I like to just call it balance.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of this, so I need more of staying still. And then maybe I'll get the itch to travel a bit more, but it'll be on my terms.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the thing that you were saying earlier, which I always love to hear when people honor when they're just like transitioning into a different phase of life.
Yeah.
I think we're so cultured to think, we need to follow a certain path that we miss the transitions. We miss the rites of passage, or we have these inklings. And we're like, if you were to just be like, well, this is what I've always done, I must keep doing it, which is what a lot of people do, then you wouldn't be honoring like, oh, I'm actually shifting into a new phase.
I feel like there's maybe a 10-year cycle thing that happens to us energetically where, and not everyone's going to agree with me on this, but I think that every 10 years, you're almost meant to reincarnate to a certain extent. And I don't mean it's not like Phoenix style, burn down your life and your career and start all over. But kind of, there is this every 10 years. It's like, okay, I've been dedicating myself to this fully. And now this is version 2.0. And, you kind of take what you worked on, whatever it was you're focusing on. What are the lessons? What's the energetic platform that you built yourself on top of? So you're not burning it down. You're taking that and then you're jumping over to the next mountain and you start scaling that. Yeah. So it's this constant quest for knowledge, staying thirsty, staying hungry. But each iteration, you're wiser. Yeah, because you have 100%. Past 10 years behind you. But I agree. If you tell yourself you have to, if I told myself I have to be a yoga teacher and that's it for the rest of my life, I would go mad. Yeah. I would go mad. That's my personality. I cannot do one thing. Same. I was not meant to do one thing. Mm-hmm. I don't think many people are. But also, I've traveled to Italy, for example, and I've met generations of Parmigiano Reggiano makers where it's been in the family for centuries. And they're just so proud when they crack that cheese open and you smell it and they show and this and that. And so there is something obviously for passing something down and how beautiful that is and heritage. But, it's okay to shake up the snow globe too and do your own thing. It just depends on your personality, and you have to know what your personality is and what fills you up.
Yeah. And I think what you said, like we're speaking this a lot in the terms of like vocation and calling, but I think we could lay everything you just said onto other things, onto relationships, onto where you live, onto all these different things that kind of like make up our identities and who we are. And, something I've been coming into lately is having hobbies, right? Like maybe I always say I wish I could be built as someone who could just like go to work and leave work at work and just like have like the steady finances and like all that stuff taken care of and then just like play everywhere else. But unfortunately, I'm just not. So like I've chosen entrepreneur path because somehow I need to express myself all the friggin' time. And, so sometimes money is like up and down and you're like, this is great. It all comes out in the wash, but it could be stressful at times. But lately I've been like, oh man, maybe for me balance looks like that I actually just don't work nearly as much as I have been for the last decade, like you were saying. And I just let myself live a more humble lifestyle where I could care less about keeping up with anyone. I just have like these basic needs that are important to me, and I want plenty of time to like play. I think part of it too is I have my first niece coming into the world at the time of recording this. Literally tomorrow she's due.
Oh wow, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yay.
I'm so excited. So I think too, I'm just seeing that like there's going to be so many things that I want to spend time on aside from working.
Yes.
So how do I figure out to just like sustain myself? That's been the word I've been focusing on lately. Sustain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like grow, hustle, like expand. I'm like, what if I just can sustain myself?
My acupuncturist calls it damage control. She's like, look, I don't know if we're going to make you feel good, but we can get rid of some stuff. And it's called damage control.
Yeah.
I also think a really interesting topic too is this whole, what's the saying that if you do what you love, you don't work a day of your life? You know how that saying goes?
It's so idealistic.
It's very idealistic. And I also don't know if I believe that you find what you're passionate about and you turn that into work. Because often if you turn your passion into work, guess what? It becomes work.
I did that with fitness.
It's just, yes, and I'm not to say that you shouldn't love some aspect of what you do for work. But I think there's something to be said for keeping space for hobbies, like you said, that is simply 100% for you.
Yeah.
Not for work, not for anyone else. You go do it for yourself. I mean, I ask myself that all the time because I am an entrepreneur. I do have my hands in a lot of different cookie jars. And, I've wanted to write a fiction book for years and it's plotting in my head. But part of me is like, do I really want to write a fiction book or do I just admire fiction writers so much and I love it so much that I want to be able to put that into the world because I love it. So I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And same thing with food. Like, what is my place in food? Because I love it so much. So I want to be part of it, but I don't want to ruin my passion for it by opening this restaurant, for example. So I'm going to be very, very delicate with how I do this because it's my happy place.
Yeah.
So there's so many, when you're sculpting a career, how can you keep some of it that's just special? It's totally yours.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely yours.
So I did, again, at the time of recording this, I did my first open mic. I did some stand-up comedy last week.
Oh, girl, what?
It's the thing I've wanted to do most since I was like 8 years old. And my brother does stand-up. Someone I was seeing does comedy. I have friends. And my friend was just like, just start doing open mics. Don't read a book. Don't take a class. He's like, you got it. Just like go do some open mics. So I went to this open mic and like, the amount of joy I felt, and I have a feeling you can relate to this, when you're like at any level of public figure and like it doesn't matter how big your following is or not, and you speak at events and you go and you teach and you lead things and people come to your stuff, you're accustomed to when you're in the front of the room, there's context for it. And people like either know who you are or like know of you or whatever.
Yes.
To be on a stage in front of a room of people who, other than my friends that came to support me, no one knew who I was. No one cared. I was a stranger. And I didn't have the constrictions of like, on my public platforms, there's things like I'm intentionally trying very hard to not be offensive and to be inclusive. But like with comedy, you can kind of like let it rip a little bit more.
Yep.
Still, I feel responsible around that, but it was only 5 minutes, and I'm actually going back tomorrow. I think I might make this a weekly ritual. I was like, maybe this is my new form of therapy. I just go to the open mic every week and just say whatever.
And just get it all out.
And just get it out. So what was interesting, I went on a tangent, but to the point that you just said, to keep something sacred for ourselves. So I posted online that I like did the stand-up, and immediately people are like, where's the video? And I'm like, first of all, I appreciate so much that people like want to see it. People are rooting me on or whatever. But I'm like, there is a video and I'm not going to post it. It gets to be for me. And then as well, people are like, is this a new career? And I'm like, hey, I went to one open mic. My friend Monish is like, a star is going to be born tonight. I'm like, how about we just let me go enjoy a thing?
Yeah.
Instead of having to turn it into something or that looming question of like, well, what's next? Or what are you going to do with it? It's like, I think this is just
with all the
hobby.
societal pressures that start to come on it. It's like, no.
No.
Yeah.
We're just going to hang out over here for a minute. So you and I actually had a really cool conversation on the retreat. We were talking about, and it's delicate, right? Because, we're both relatively fit people, relatively healthy people, lots and lots of privilege, able-bodied. But, we were talking about how we've both been more fit or more in shape than we currently are by cultural standards. Like I have to put that in air quotes all the time.
There's so many parameters. Yeah,
There's
exactly.
so many parameters, right? Because, for anyone listening, and here's the little trigger warning, like to talk about size or weight or numbers could be like really hard for people. And it really was a blind spot for me for a number of years because I've never really had the experience of being in a much larger body than I have right now. So for me right now, this is my larger body. And I know that's a really different experience from a lot of people, but it still is an experience. It still is an identity shift. It still is, especially when you're a person who's online and there's pictures of you everywhere and like people feel entitled to like make comments about the shape of your body if it's different than it used to be. So there's so many threads we could pull here around this conversation. I want to open it up and ask like anything in particular on your mind about it, or that you feel passionate or excited or just comfortable to poke at the moment.
Oh gosh. I really seesaw, I want to say almost day to day with how comfortable I feel in my skin.
Yeah.
But I do find that as I get older, I'm much quicker at pulling myself away from the ledge and back onto my own 2 feet.
Yeah.
Than I used to when I was younger. I'm not sure I'm ever going to get completely away from the edge just because it's such a tempting view. But it's tricky. And I think it's especially tricky. I'm engaged to a woman, and this is the first serious relationship that I've ever been in with a woman before. It's really fascinating being in an intimate relationship with someone who has the same level of neuroses around her body that I do. And I've become hyper aware to the language surrounding it and the energy of self-deprecating talk out loud.
Yeah.
And not only how it must be affecting her, but how it affects me.
Yeah.
And when I hear someone that I love and I think is, drop dead gorgeous and lovely and perfect, talking so ill about themselves, it makes me sick to my stomach. And I've just learned how to completely rewire that to think, if I'm doing that, how is that making other people feel about themselves?
Yeah.
So for me, it's a constant to be very careful with how I speak about myself. It doesn't mean that I lie. I just don't give myself the open mic to bitch and moan about my body.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I'm really privileged. And yes, this is the bigger iteration of my body that I've seesawed. I'm 5'2". I've been a size 0. I'm a size 4 right now, which I know on the grand scheme of things is like a little tater tot. And I know that, but it's my experience, my own meat suit and the iterations that it's been through. And I don't know, I have more cellulite than I've ever had in my entire life. I have skin that sags that didn't sag before. I'm also 36, it's called aging.
Yeah.
My body is changing. I've injured myself. I can't get I've got buddies for life in my shoulder. That's what I call my injuries, buddies for life. And it's just making peace with this meat suit will change. And if I fixate on what my waist looks like in proportion to my tits or my ass and this and that and it makes me so ill.
Yeah.
And I mean, I even had a moment on our retreat that you went on with me in Mexico where I found myself really deep into the pool of comparison with other bodies. And it's difficult for me too, when I'm one of the leaders in a situation. I want people to look at me, and I want to be that gleaming, exemplary, fit body, not like glossy Photoshop cover of magazine, but just, I want people to look to me and like, wow, I'm taking class from her because look, she's so strong and fit. And it's taken me a long time to realize that being in the body that I'm in is way more inspiring than a magazine version of myself that I tell myself I should.
Yes, 1,000%. And I think this really speaks to the way we are cultured as a whole culture, but especially as women, to constantly be dissatisfied with our bodies if it doesn't look a certain way. And for those of us who are closer, we might not be in the norm, but we're closer to the norm, to know that we have this much neuroses just brings me to so much compassion, for people who are much farther from the norm. But what I love too is how many people I meet who are farther from the norm who don't. Yeah. Who are fully accepting. So it's such an interesting nuance to me to look at what causes a person to be accepting or to not be accepting. Quick break in the show to give you all a little Patreon update. If you're not familiar with the site Patreon, head on over to patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed to check it out. It's basically this amazing platform where artists and content creators and creatives can post their art and their work, and their fans and followers can essentially be their patrons. They could be their sponsors. They can make donations at various levels so that people can do their work in a sustainable way. And it doesn't have to be all about shady or high pressure marketing practices or anything. People can just share, be in community, and it's one amazing platform to do all of that on. They have a really easy to use app. You can download the Patreon app, and some of your favorite content creators are actually on there doing their thing. So in June, I decided to create a Patreon. One of the reasons being that social media these days can be super overwhelming, and there are just things that I really want to share. I want to be able to go deeper with people. I want to be able to do more with and for our community, and Patreon is the place where I am doing that. So we have all kinds of super affordable levels that you can become a patron at and receive patron-only posts and essays that I'm writing, 2 bonus podcast episodes a month, 2 Wild Soul Movement practice sessions a month, as well as some other things. So head on over to patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed if you're interested in checking that out. And just to let you know as well, as I really get into doing more stand-up comedy, and I've really just been studying and researching a lot more around so many of the main topics that tug my heartstrings about the show, I'm going to be writing and posting way more over on the Patreon. And it will be stuff that I will not be sharing on social media. So you got to be on Patreon if you want to check that stuff out. So that is that. Head on over there, check it out, invite and bring your friends. And now back to the show. For me, I just think of, I grew up in a household. My mom had been overweight since childhood. And so that was something that she always battled with. And my aunts, like all of the influential women in my life were, for the most part, always between some diet or another. And
right.
the talk, like you were mentioning earlier, about their own bodies was like, no one was ever satisfied with their body. So like, I kind of picked up by secondhand smoke that to not be satisfied with your body. Like I didn't ever know what that looked like. And I think it's the, you teach what you need to learn type of thing. Like, why did I create Wild Soul Movement? Why did I move into this embodiment work where I teach people to like love their body for 1,000 reasons other than what the frick it looks like, But it doesn't mean that any of us ever really stop battling with that. I mean, temporarily, like you said, like maybe it's like 80-20. 80% of the time, I'm like totally cool with this. 20% of the time, I'm like, for real? Like that,
I know.
So it's interesting. And I hope we're being sensitive enough, again, to all the different situations and bodies and whatever is going on for people who are listening.
Well, I think there's some comedy in the situation too, that, we could all use a little bit of that lightness where, and maybe people listening can relate to this moment, but where I'll be taking some kind of class, a yoga class, Pure Barre class, Pilates, whatever. And I'll have on my leggings and I got on my sports bra and then I got on my top. I never wear super tight tops because they make me feel like a sausage and I just don't like feeling like that. So, I normally have on a looser top and I'll be in some kind of position where obviously my shirt will slip up and you can see my belly. And this, this is similar to the kind of talk that goes through my head is like, oh God, my belly's exposed. Oh God, is someone going to look over and look at my tummy? Are they going to judge it? Is it like floppy? Is it's sticking out right now? And then quickly the comedy is like, who the F cares?
Who cares?
Like, is someone really going to take the time in the middle of this excruciating thing that we're doing to look over and be judgmental about what my belly looks like? Like, how egotistical am I that I think the world is so consumed with looking at me and judging me? And you know what? If they actually happen to be, which again, I doubt anyone's taking the time to because they're too busy being judgmental about their own body, like screw them.
Right.
Like, it's just, it really is one of those things where people are going to be judgment. Like you ain't got time for that.
Yeah.
But you have to remember the most judgmental person always is yourself. And if you think people are judging you, trust me, they are too busy judging themselves.
Yeah. And
it's just, ugh.
What's funny to me too is if I do ever look over at someone who maybe is in a larger body or has some belly fat hanging out or whatever, I'm never like, ew. I'm like, yeah.
I know.
I'm like, look at her rocking her body exactly how it is. I love that. Meanwhile, I don't know what's going on in her brain. She might be self-conscious, and I'm over here like, yeah, rock it.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's even a dialogue, I think we had this conversation on the retreat as well of like, even when we're like out to eat, right? Like I remember being out to dinner. This is like last year. I'm with a friend, and I decided to order pasta. And for some reason, I felt the need to like make an announcement about it. Like I needed to be like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get the pasta. And she's like, good for you. And I'm like, why is this a conversation?
I know.
It's so weird.
I know. It's, and especially when it comes to food, because for me, food is the most beautiful, amazing experience you can share with someone.
Yeah.
Like when you, and And look, I get it. Like there's celiac. There's all these reasons to not eat certain foods. And we're at the height of being educated to exactly what kind of foods do what to your body.
Yeah.
And it's almost too much information, because what makes me feel really, really good is a big slab of grilled bread that has been like doused in olive oil or butter.
Yeah.
What are the nutritional values to something like that? Yeah, I know. Pretty slim. But how does that make me feel? It makes me feel like $100.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where if we get so caught up in what is this doing, what are the nutrients? How is this serving me? Is this bad for me? Was that too many carbs? Like you are going to ruin your life if you're thinking like that all the time. Where it's just go out, experience the culture, the cuisine, the chefs, what they have put these flavors together so meticulously to let you have this unbelievable full body experience.
Yeah.
And we're just cuffing ourselves from being able to step into that. So that's something that really happens for me when I'm eating food. It's like zero judgment when I'm eating. And pasta, girl, I mean, pasta all day long.
All day.
And
that's really, it's one of the reasons why my body is bigger than it used to be, because I stopped. It's like I got to this point where I was like, I know too much about food. I can either be thinking about what's in this and what's going to do to me. I have a friend of mine who once said the guilt is going to have a worse effect on you than the gluten.
Absolutely.
Right? But at the same time as well, like I want to acknowledge the people who are listening who have a history of eating disorders maybe, and food might not be enjoyable for them, There might not be much pleasure there. It might be like the most friggin' stressful choice they have to make every single day, and they're constantly battling. Like I remember someone saying once how, for people who are addicts and they recover from drugs or alcohol or something else, it's cool because it's not cool, but like you can cut those things out of your life. But people who have struggled with food, you still have to eat every single day. So I know it's one of the most challenging things ever for some people. And personally, since moving to California over the last few years, like I picked up some emotional eating habits that like I'm still working my way around. Like I'm still navigating. And it's just these, again, all these things intersect, right? Like what's been our personal experience with something? What's the cultural norm? What do we think? Kind of going back to the original thing that you said, the pursuit of happiness versus what actually makes me happy. What I think I should be doing, and then what actually produces the result. I think we can find that in this body conversation we were having, the food conversation we were having. And I think that the most interesting thing about the time that we live in right now is there's more information available than ever, but there's still no right or wrong answer.
Oh, I like that. I really like that. It's still up to the individual and their experience and what serves them.
Yeah, 1,000%. So I'd love, if you're cool with it, to chat about also another big life transition you had. Like you said, this is your most, I won't call it your most meaningful, but probably like you're engaged to a woman. And this was your first like really serious relationship. And I know there was also navigating the being a public figure and like coming out into the world with that. Is there anything that you feel comfortable or that you can share about, that transition and what that experience was like?
It was hard. It's hard going through a divorce period. It felt especially hard. We were married for about a year before we separated from each other. And so it was one of those relationships where it was very challenging because even getting into the marriage, my intuition knew that this wasn't right and that he wasn't the right person for me. But I think I got swept up in some of it's public figure stuff and some of it's just people knew we were getting married and we had made plans and there's just like once you send out invitations, I don't know why that seems like a tattoo, but it seems so permanent. And that was hard. It was just really hard. And I don't want to say I have regrets. I have ways that I wish I had done things differently. I have definitely ways that I wish he had done things differently. It was a really hard experience for both of us. Yeah. And then meeting Kate and, she just completely opened my eyes and I don't think I had ever considered fully the idea of marrying a woman and what that would be like. So she really came out of nowhere for me. Yeah. But it's just, she is my person. She is without a doubt the person that I want to have a family with, that I want to share my life with. And it's it is interesting. I do like all of my friends and family have been completely supportive. There has been no strange interactions there. So I'm very, very lucky. My parents are fantastic humans, and everyone who loves me just wants to see me happy. And there's no judgment around that. And overall, the reactions have been very, very positive. There's a few kind of bigoted comments that I will get on posts from time to time, which is no surprise because, the comment section on social media is a bit of a cesspool at times.
Yeah.
So I'm not totally surprised by that. I have noticed, I don't know if it's correlated with being with a woman, but even just my social numbers have gone to a standstill since I publicly came out with the fact that I am with a woman.
That's interesting.
So I think it's interesting because what you see, the people who do comment are so supportive, and the people who are supportive are actually very loud when it comes to LGBTQ issues. But there's still a lot of behind the scenes who, because of their political and or religious beliefs, are not okay with it.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't mean that they don't still want to take a yoga class from me or what have you, but they don't agree with my choice. And, that's obviously a podcast of its own of why people feel that way. And that's really, I'm not surprised. I can't say I'm surprised, but it is just hurtful that people feel that way. And, we live in Charleston, South Carolina. We're in the South, which there are certain areas where I get a little uppity. This is the first relationship in my life where I have understood the privilege of being a heteronormative human and what it's like to walk down the street and, depending on where you are in the world, not know if it's safe to hold the person's hand that you love.
Yeah.
And that's crazy, so that's the stuff that's been, again, it's not surprising. It's just sad. And, but it's also been wonderful for me as a human and a teacher to see more sides of what it's like to be more empathetic, to hopefully educate people. Because I think there's a lot of people who may have just wanted me to be that stereotypical heteronormative, blonde hair, blue-eyed white girl who had the fairy tale wedding with a big, strong man.
Yeah.
And obviously when I crashed that, they're like, what? Who are you now? But I'm the same person. I'm not a different person. I just found my human. And so I think that's important for people to know. It's like, if you loved me before, there's no reason that you can't love me now. Yes. I have the same heart. I just have found the right person. And it may not be what societally people, it's not the cutout Ken and Barbie doll that people always plan on.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I think, for me personally, I just never had exposure to a lot of people who were just not heterosexual. And so It's actually one of the things, I've never told you this, but this is one of the things that I enjoyed most about the retreat was being around you two being together, because I don't really get to be around same-sex couples. And it was so awesome. And I'm going to expose my own ignorance in a way of being like, it's exactly the same as everybody else. Like, look how cute they are. Look how loving they are. Like, it's so, and I was like, it sounds silly, but when you're not around something and you're just not familiar with it.
No, it's not
there's
silly.
Like a
it's
weird curiosity.
Like,
people. Is it going to be different? Is this where it's like, no, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same as looking at the woman with like the belly and being like, yeah, girl, like I am gravitated towards people who are doing life in a way that is not socially or societally as acceptable or as normal as everyone else, because like there's like always been this weird part of me that like craves to like be on the margins with the rebels, and not wait, let me distinguish that, not necessarily the rebels, but just like not the,
you just don't want to fit the norm.
Exactly. Because I don't in a lot of ways, so that's why I love all the people who don't as well, for whatever reason.
Absolutely. And I think that through this it's like what you said, that it seems you're almost confessing that that was something weird for you. But I think what's important, because I've been on the other side of it before, where it's important to educate people and give them these other perspectives. And I think it's really important to educate without shame. Yeah. Because it's so easy to, once you learn more and you understand more, how fast you can be to judge other people and be like, wow, you're a little late to the party. Oh, really? You never thought about that before? I mean, people get angry, and I get it. I mean, a lot of people have some pretty serious reasons to be angry, But I have learned through my personal experience that the only way we're going to change people is there has to be compassion, and you have to be a compassionate teacher. And even if it's frustrating that people haven't taken the time to understand what it's like to live in someone else's shoes, the hard, cold fact is most people haven't. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad humans. It's like you said, it means that they've never had gay friends. They've never had Black friends. They've never had Muslim friends. They just haven't had the exposure. So it hasn't been, in the forefront of their mind. Yeah. Again, not bad. They just need someone to help them and educate them in a kind, like, okay, now it's time to open your eyes a little bit more and be inclusive with your thought process and your words. And, for me, pronouns, one of the hardest parts for me is I'll be in an Uber and they'll be making small talk with me and they'll be like, oh, so your boyfriend or your husband? And I'm like, no, my girlfriend, my wife, it's just like having to correct someone's pronouns when they just make the assumption that you must be with a guy. That's really hard. And I would love for society to be more sensitive with their speech when it comes to stuff like that, because then it immediately puts me in a defensive place where am I going to speak up? I'm going to say, no, actually I have a girlfriend and prove a point, or I'm never going to talk to you again and it doesn't matter. You don't need to know anything about me. Yeah. And then, and do I have shame admitting that I'm with a woman? Why can't I just loud and proud say that? Or does it matter? What am I, and then you get into this crazy conversation with yourself where if someone had just been like, so are you meeting up with your significant other? Are you here with your partner?
Yeah.
Like, just not assuming a gender. That's one little step that most people could make in their lives that would be awesome.
Yeah, because, while we can correct people for the various reasons that arise to correct people about who we are and how we live our lives, we can do it compassionately, we can do it kindly. There's still always a little trace in it that feels combative.
Yes. Yes, and that's never going to go away.
It's not.
But I think in those moments, you just kind of have to swallow it for a second and go, okay, I can scare someone off and I can scar them permanently because I'm going to come at them really hot. And this is going to, like, I can educate them on this and bring them into the community and change them. Or I can just shame them into hating and thinking I am a jerk and that anyone like me is like that.
Yeah.
So that to me is the difference. It's like, I understand anger. It's not going to serve the purpose that if you're trying to make change, I just don't think it helps.
I love this because actually, so the next thing I wanted to ask you is something you just answered by saying that. I was going to ask, what do you think is the difference between shame and accountability? And from what you just said, it sounds like one way is going to be the shame way, that you're going to go at that person and probably create the consequence of they're just going to blanket an assumption over everyone who's in your group, whatever that is.
Right.
Or like that, because that's been their experience now. Or the accountable way is to just invite them in. Yeah. Let them know what's up. It doesn't, without necessarily being attached to that they do it right or wrong or whatever. But I could not agree with you more about educating without shame because, and again, we see this, it's so rampant online where people are just coming at people and they just communication wise, no one's really going to deeply listen to you when you're throwing daggers.
No, because we're all so sensitive. No matter how hard your exterior is, how tough your skin seems, we are all little sensitive newborn kittens. We know not even kittens. Kittens have nails. We're little sensitive newborn puppies. And, and so no matter what your armor looks like, when people come at you hot like that, really hurts. And not only hurts, it scars. These are the comments that stick with people for the rest of their life. So I don't know. I believe in a soft approach.
Yeah. But I also, the word I keep coming back to around a lot of things lately is fierce, because I think fierce love is something I've been exploring, because I can be so compassionate, but it's also fierce in that I'm standing for what I believe in and what's right and what's important to me. But again, not doing it without cutting people down, but I'm not going to pretend something's okay when it's not. I'm not going to drum up more tolerance for a thing that I actually don't have tolerance for. But, And I'm not going to worry that someone is going to be uncomfortable. I'm not going to try to manage their discomfort, but I'm also just basically not going to be an asshole about it.
Yes, absolutely.
That's pretty much
and
it.
Managing someone's discomfort, that's the hardest part for me personally.
Yeah.
Because I am still a little Kansas girl on the inside who's like, I just want to be polite and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But I'm in more and more scenarios lately where people say something and I just, what? Like, did you actually just say that? Mm-hmm. Do you understand what that means and how? I mean, Kate and I talk about this all the time, that she regularly gets misgendered because she has short hair and she wears Jordans and she doesn't wear a tutu is what it feels like.
What?
And
I could never look at Kate and think she's a guy.
No, neither can I. She doesn't look like a guy at all, but it happens on the regular. And it's a very hot topic for the two of us, just because it's like something she's dealt with since she was a little girl when she first cut her hair short and she played baseball, you know, and so there's a lot of what is representative of gender and feminine, masculine, and how society deems each appropriate, and how stripping it is when someone, not purposely, I don't think anyone's purposely misgendering her. They're just not taking the time to actually take her in. That's a lot. You know?
I think that's indicative of a ton of things. You know what I find interesting too, that I didn't realize until a few years ago, actually, with a lesbian couple who I'm not super close with them, but they were talking about it online, is when people ask a same-sex couple, who's the guy, who's the girl?
Oh, don't get me started.
Like, we're
like,
so
I'm sorry, are we not fitting your societal norms enough that you have to put us back into boy and girl? Are you kidding me?
So weird.
Yeah, I know. And then that's just generations and generations of, this is how it's supposed to be. This is the man, this is the woman. They unite. Like, and that's going to take a long time, but it isn't a butch and a femme. It's not like there's no, and even within the term like lesbian, I don't identify with the word lesbian. I don't even fully identify with gay or bi. I identify with fluid. That's how I see myself sexually, is that I have had the majority of my romantic relationships with men. I'm marrying a woman. I have been sexually attracted and involved with women before. And to me, I am interested in the human. So I don't identify with lesbian because that insinuates that you're only attracted to women. Bi seems like I've flip-flopped back and forth, and just fluid is when I see a human that I'm attracted to, like, that's what it is for me. So I think even within trying to label people with what they are sexually, that's something that people can't make assumptions on either.
And that's also a way of people managing their own comfort as well. Like, why do we even need to put a label on you? I do have a friend, though, who came up with this term. This guy named Javon calls it vibe sexual. He's like, I'm into the vibe of a person. And I'm like, I kind of like that.
I like that.
Yeah, right? So, Thank you for sharing all of that, because, again, this is a real area on the podcast for sure that I haven't explored a lot, partially because I haven't educated myself as much in this realm as other places, and I'm always just really cautious. I'm not trying to be an unintentional asshole. So anyone listening, though, knows that I'm really open to feedback. So if I said something or asked something in a way that, like, you found offensive, like, email us at hello@elizabethdialto.com. Like, always let me know, because I'm happy to, like, do it better next time.
I love that about you.
You don't seem to be offended, so hopefully I didn't mess anything up too bad.
It's a good start. It's a really good start.
It's a good start. You didn't hang up the interview like this ignorant bitch. So tell me, I want to know more about the relationship with food. Like, I'm such a functional person when it comes to food. Like, I do like to cook. Like, I've been getting more back into cooking. But, like, I like to geek out on the things that people are passionate about. So, like, when did you discover that you were, like, really into food, and that was, like, the thing that you love to, part of what you love to do and share with people?
I mean, I think I came out of the womb hungry, so I've always been a very impassioned eater. But I didn't grow up. My parents don't really cook, so it wasn't something that I experienced growing up so much. I had a high school boyfriend who both of his parents, they were divorced, and both of them were fantastic cooks. And so I would eat at his dad's house and then his mom's house, and learned so much. They taught me the basics, you know, they taught me how to make rice. They taught me how to make a pasta sauce. They taught me how to, you know, make fantastic green beans, all these interesting things where I was like, what is this witchcraft?
I never would have thought of, like, describing green beans as fantastic.
You know? So by the time I went to college, I was one of the only people within my group that knew anything about cooking. So I would cook for my roommates, and my boyfriend in college would, he would grill the meat and I would make the rice and the sides and the veggies. And then I moved to Los Angeles and I started working with one of my main clients was Giada De Laurentiis, who's an Italian chef. And she taught me so much because, I mean, if you've ever done a private yoga session, you basically just talk the entire time.
Yeah.
So she taught me so much about food. And also my travel was a huge part of it, is that I got to see the world and I got to experience it through food, and getting to go to all these different cultures and seeing how they cook and the different seasonings and spices and how you put food together was really exciting for me. So it's kind of connected to storytelling for me, is that I can tell a story through the way that I cook. And I truly love every aspect of it. I love the shopping. I love the smelling, the cooking, the creating, the combining, the entertaining, the feeding the people I love, the going out to restaurants and experiencing. I'm always taking notes at restaurants.
That's cool.
I gotta see if I can recreate something like this. So it's just, I don't know. I think, magazines like Bon Appetit and Food and Wine are like pornos for me. I'm like,
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So I also know sometimes, to wrap up, I don't do this all the time, but I like to ask people, like, what are they reading or what are they watching on TV right now? And I know you're also an avid reader.
Yes.
So first of all, how many books are you reading right now?
Well, actually, a couple. I'm reading Circe, which is by Madeline Miller. It's the follow-up to her book Song of Achilles, and it's Circe is the witch in the Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
She's a Titan, and so it's her imagined. She's really fleshed out the entire life of Circe. So it's
cool.
this really beautiful, steeped in mythology book that I'm loving. And then I'm actually doing some research for a book that I'm working on that may take another 5 to 10 years to write.
Yeah.
So I'm also reading Metamorphosis, Ovid. Very old school. God, did I have another book going? No, that's it. Wow, only have 2. Okay.
Were you always a person who would read more than one book at a time, or did that develop?
I don't like to do that, actually. I really prefer to commit to one book at a time. I'm a book monogamist as much as possible. But it's hard when and maybe it's just that constantly cycling brain.
Yeah.
Is like, oh, I want to read this, but then I've got to get some good ideas from this. And then I'll have some kind of fiction, nonfiction, fiction stuff going on where it's like, oh, this feeds my brain and this feeds my heart. And
yeah.
So I'm kind of taking snippets of that. I'll mark certain books up where I don't read the entire thing, but I try to get little snippets and takeaways that get me excited to have a theme for a podcast or a theme to write a new yoga class or something along those lines.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you. Thank you for literally sharing so much of yourself here. I know this is what I love about having a podcast. It's called Truth Telling. We can go anywhere, and we often do. So thank you so much. Where's your favorite place for people to find you and connect with you if they're interested in that?
It's all the same thing. It's all Kathryn Budig. So it's KathrynBudig.com, and all my handles are at Kathryn Budig. It's KathrynBudig.
Thank you, Kathryn, so much. Thank you, everyone listening, and we'll talk to you later.